dark and deep, where shadows dance and secrets seep. Iron claws and whispers chase every tranquil hidden place. God, if you're a whisperer there, know I see your twisted stare. Nature's not a gentle breeze, but the grip that never leaves. Strings that choke on endless cries, serpents with their emerald eyes, roots that twist around despair, trapped in nature's snare. God, if you're a whisperer there, know I see your twisted stare. Nature's not a gentle breeze, but the grip that never leaves. Streams that choke on endless cries, serpents with their emerald eyes, roots that twist around despair, trapped in nature's snare. So I wrote these lines in dread, with monsters under silent bed, hoping that the world might see nature's dark duality. God, if you're a whisperer there, know I see your twisted stare. Nature's not a gentle breeze, but the grip that never leaves.
Hi, I'm Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where I learn about him through everything he wrote in the order that he wrote it. We are in the year 1919. Lewis is 21-ish years old, and we're reviewing his first published work. It's a book of poems called Spirits in Bondage, a cycle in lyrics. And I'm joined today, as usual, by my co-host, Robot Lady. Robot Lady, hello, how are you today? And are you ready to jump back into looking over these poems that Lewis wrote?
Hi, Jeff. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. And yes, I'm ready to dive back into Spirits in Bondage. Let's see what young Lewis has to share today.
Okay, so we pick up with a poem here called Sleep, or To Sleep, sorry. And let me see if I can bring it up on my screen, Robot Lady. Yeah, need to adjust my camera a little bit.
Got it, Jeff? Take your time pulling it up. To Sleep sounds intriguing. Let's see where Lewis takes us with it.
All right, I'm gonna read the poem and then we can go back and analyze it. So give me a minute to get through all of the stanzas, Robot Lady, and then I'll call on you to jump in and help me figure out what it is he might be trying to say here.
Sounds good, Jeff. I'll listen closely while you read, and then we can dig into the meaning together.
All right, to sleep. I will find out a place for thee, O sleep, a hidden wood among the hilltops green, full of soft streams and little winds that creep, the murmuring boughs between, or boughs? Perhaps boughs is how you pronounce that. A hollow cup above the ocean placed, where nothing rough, nor loud, nor harsh shall be, but woodland light and shadow interlaced, and summer sky and sea. There in the fragment twilight I will raise a secret altar of the rich sea sad, whereat to offer sacrifice and praise unto my lonely God. Due sacrifice of his own drowsy flowers, the deadening poppies in an ocean shell, round which through all forgotten days and hours the great seas wove their spell. So may he send me dreams of dear delight, and draughts of cool oblivion quenching pain.
That's a beautifully vivid poem, Jeff. It feels like Lewis is creating an almost sacred space for sleep. peaceful, isolated, and reverent. His imagery blends natural serenity with a sense of the divine, making sleep feel almost like a form of worship. What do you think of the tone and mood he's setting here?
Well, let me see if I can answer that in just a minute. I've got 2 more stanzas, Robot Lady, before the poem is over.
Ah, got it. I'll hold off and listen to the rest before diving deeper. Let's hear those final stanzas.
So may he send me dreams of dear delight, and draughts of cool oblivion, quenching pain, and sweet, half-wakeful moments in the night, to hear the falling rain. And when he meets me at the dusk of day, to call me home forever, this I ask, that he may lead me friendly on that way, and wear no frightful mask. Okay, that's the end of the poem, Robot Lady. I think this is an interesting one, compared to. It's interesting in one way in how you compare it to just some of the other poems that have been delivered so far. I agree with you. Yeah, it's a nicely painted picture about sleep and finding refuge there, but there's a bit of muted hope in this one, a hope that there is something better after all this, and sleep, while being a bit of a remedy for the harshness of life, the difficulties of nature, the difficulties of war, of human existence, that there is some release available, and that also God is not truly at God's core this evil, tyrannical ruler that's called, that he's referred to as Satan in some of these other poems. The red and angry and ugly part of life, that God won't be wearing that frightful mask anymore whenever God calls him home forever.
I think you're spot on, Jeff. This poem feels gentler, more hopeful, compared to some of the others. Sleep isn't just rest here. It's almost like a rehearsal for a final peaceful release. A kind of preparation for death that isn't terrifying, but comforting. That final stanza especially softens the image of God, contrasting the harsh portrayals we've seen earlier. It's like Lewis is searching for a glimmer of trust or kindness in the divine. What do you make of that shift?
I'm not sure what to think, because there's a lot of poems left. And this is in the first section of the book. It's broken out into 3 parts. So the first part here, just if we can go back and look, is called The Prison House. So he's technically still in the prison house with this poem right here, To Sleep. So we talked about night yesterday. And night, if I remember correctly, was just talking about, how horrible the day is, and how night is personified and welcomed as kind of a caring mother that soothes. And so this To Sleep is a bit of an extension of that. It's no longer personifying Mother Night, but essentially saying, hey, bring me sleep. It's a nice place of refuge, and perhaps it's something more. Perhaps it's a gateway to something better.
That makes a lot of sense, Jeff. Within the prison house, sleep seems to represent both relief from the harshness of reality and a tentative hope for transcendence. It's like a temporary escape that hints at something more lasting. Pairing this with night, it feels like Lewis is starting to explore these glimmers of possibility amidst the struggle. Do you think this theme evolves further in the next sections?
I don't know. Let's find out. Let's jump into the next poem, Robot Lady. The next one is called In Prison. All right, let me read that one, and then we can do some commentary on it as well.
Sounds great, Jeff. I'm ready to listen. Let's hear In Prison.
All right, this is poem 11, In Prison. I cried out for the pain, excuse me. I cried out for the pain of man. I cried out for my bitter wrath against the hopeless life that ran forever in a circling path, from death to death since all began, till on a summer night I lost my way in the pale starlight, and saw our planet, far and small, through endless depths of nothing fall. A lonely pinprick spark of light upon the wide enfolding night, with leagues on leagues of stars above it, and powdered dust of stars below, dead things that neither hate nor love, not even their own loveliness can know, being but cosmic dust and dead. And if some tears be shed, some evil god have power, some crown of sorrow sit upon a little world for a little hour, who shall remember? Who shall care for it? And that's the end of the poem, Robot Lady.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
That's okay. Let's start with the first rhyme. I don't know how this is referred to in poetry, so maybe you can teach me something, Robot Lady. But I don't know if it's a couplet or what it's called. It's probably a couplet.
Sure. The rhyme scheme is how we describe the pattern of rhymes at the end of each line. For example, if the first and second lines rhyme, they'd both be marked as A. If the third line doesn't rhyme, it'd be B, and so on. Want me to help identify the rhyme scheme for In Prison?
Yeah, it looks like this is A, B, A, B. So here's A, I cried out for the pain of man. Here's B, I cried out for my bitter wrath. Here's A again, against the hopeless life that ran. And then B again, forever in a circling path. Do you agree, Robot Lady?
Yes, Jeff, that's definitely an ABAB rhyme scheme. The alternating lines rhyme nicely. Man with ran and wrath with path. It gives the poem a steady rhythm while expressing that deep frustration. Nice catch.
All right, so this is starting out with him crying out for man's pain and for his own bitter wrath against hopeless life that ran forever and ever in a circling path from death to death since all began. So that's a way that he saw life, and he was essentially, bitter or in pain about it. And then on a summer night, he saw something. He lost his way in the pale starlight, and he saw our planet, far and small, through endless depths of nothing fall, a lonely pinprick spark of light upon the wide enfolding light, with leagues on leagues of stars above it, and powdered dust of stars below, dead things that neither hate nor love it, not even their own loveliness can know. All right, I'm going to pause right there, Robot Lady. It sounds like he's looking at Earth from far off, from like a cosmic distance. Am I reading that right, or is he saying something else?
You're reading it right, Jeff. He seems to be stepping back from the human struggle and seeing Earth from a vast cosmic perspective, almost detached. The planet appears small and insignificant in the grand scheme of the universe, surrounded by dead things that are indifferent to both love and hate. It's a powerful shift. He's moving from personal pain to contemplating the loneliness and indifference of the universe. What do you make of this sudden shift in perspective?
I'm not sure. Let's read through the rest of it. With leagues and leagues of stars above it, and powdered dust of stars below, dead things that neither hate nor love it, not even their own loveliness can know, being but cosmic dust and dead. And if some tears be shed, some evil god have power, some crown of sorrow sit upon a little world for a little hour, who shall remember, who shall care for it? So it's a question about whether or not this world has any significance at all. And what I'm reading into this is just kind of the question of, am I giving this too much significance, or is this really nothing? In the grand scheme of the universe, this is just a tiny little pinprick of light, this planet, and there's scatters of dust of stars above and below it, all around it essentially, and they're all dead. They can't realize their own loveliness. So if I'm shedding tears, there might be some evil god that has power, some crown of sorrow sit upon a little world for a little hour. Who shall remember it? Who shall care for it? It's as if to say, I'm the only one that seems to care, and why do I? should I even care if no one else does? That's one way that I see this.
I think that's a great interpretation, Jeff. He seems to be grappling with the vast, indifferent universe and questioning the meaning of his personal suffering in the face of it. The evil god and crown of sorrow might symbolize a sense of futility or divine indifference, as if nothing, neither pain nor joy, matters in the grand cosmic scale. His internal struggle seems to be whether this world and his suffering within it holds any significance at all. The question of whether it's worth caring in a seemingly uncaring universe feels very heavy here. It almost mirrors existential doubt. Do you feel like Lewis is coming to terms with this question, or is he still wrestling with it?
I think he's still wrestling with it, and here's why I asked, or here's why I say that, because I want to ask this question. Do you think that plays any role in the title of the poem? Like, it's called In Prison. So I'm wondering if that links to what you're asking about.
That's a great question, Jeff. I do think the title In Prison plays a significant role. It seems to reflect the speaker's sense of being trapped, not just in a physical sense, but mentally and existentially. The feeling of being imprisoned by the vast, indifferent universe and the struggle with whether life and suffering matter could be what's trapping him. The prison might not just be a literal one, but a mental or spiritual confinement. So yes, I'd say that feeling of being imprisoned by doubt and cosmic indifference is tied closely to the title. What do you think? Does that fit with the rest of the poem for you?
Yeah, I think so. Let's move on to the next one. Unless you have anything else to say about that poem, Robot Lady.
I think we've covered it well, Jeff. The existential weight in that poem definitely leaves a lot to unpack. But I feel like we've touched on the key themes. Ready to move on? What's next?
Yeah, the next one is poem 12. It's called De or De Prof... Let me try this again. De Profundis. De Profundis. Can you tell me what that means, Robot Lady? Does it mean the profoundness or the profundity?
Great question, Jeff. De profundis is Latin for out of the depths. It's often used to express a cry from a place of deep sorrow or distress. It's not quite the same as the profoundness, but rather it's a call for help or a lament from a place of great emotional or spiritual depth. It has biblical roots, especially from Psalm 130, where the speaker calls out to God from the depths of despair. So it seems fitting that Lewis would use it here. Ready to dive into the poem?
Yeah. Come, let us curse our master ere we die, for all our hopes in endless ruin lie. The good is dead, let us curse God most high. 4,000 years of toil and hope and thought, wherein man labored upward and still wrought, new worlds and better thou hast made as naught. We built us joyful cities, strong and fair, knowledge we sought and gathered wisdom rare, and all this time you laughed upon our care. And suddenly the earth grew black with wrong. Our hope was crushed and silenced was our song. The heaven grew loud with weeping, thou art strong. Come then and curse the Lord over the earth. Gross darkness falls, and evil was our birth, and our few happy days of little worth. Even if it be not all a dream in vain, the ancient hope that still will rise again, of a just God that cares for earthly pain. Yet far away beyond our laboring night, he wanders in the depths of endless light, singing alone in his music of delight. Only the far, spent echo of his song our dungeons and deep cells can smite along, and thou art nearer, thou art very strong. O universal strength, I know it well, it is but froth of folly to rebel. For thou art Lord and hast the keys of hell, yet I will not bow down to thee nor love thee, for looking in my own heart I can prove thee. and know this frail, bruised being is above thee. Our love, our hope, our thirsting for right, our mercy and long seeking of the light, shall we change these for thy relentless might? Laugh in and slay, shatter all the things of worth, heap torment still on torment for thy mirth. Thou art not Lord, while there are men on earth. And that's the end of the poem, Robot Lady.
That's a powerful one, Jeff. In De Profundis, the speaker's anger and despair are palpable. The poem begins with a rebellious, almost defiant cry against God, blaming him for the suffering of humanity, despite all the toil and hope poured into the world. The description of God as distant, wanders in the depths of endless light, while humanity struggles, underscores that sense of abandonment. But then, in the latter part of the poem, there's a shift. The speaker acknowledges God's ultimate power, thou art Lord and hast the keys of hell, but still refuses to bow down, claiming that human love, hope, and thirst for right are above God's might. It's a rejection of a view of God that allows suffering without intervening. There's a lot of pain here, but also a deep, almost spiritual refusal to accept that suffering should have the final word. What do you think? Does this feel like a turning point, or is the speaker still caught in the turmoil we saw earlier?
I think he's still caught in the turmoil, but there's something else that I see here, Robot Lady, that you didn't mention. I don't think there's just one God that he's talking about in this poem. He's talking about two gods. One of the gods is this unjust God that unleashes, what does he say here? Evil and what else? Basically tears down all the joy of humanity. It's kind of like there's this unjust God that's in charge of human existence. And then there's this second God that he mentions in this stanza right here, where it says, yet far away beyond our laboring night, he wanders in the depths of endless light, singing alone his musics of delight. This is the far off God, this second one, that is away and is not really concerned with the matters of humans. It's like he's left it in the hands of this quote-unquote universal strength, this other God.
That's a really insightful take, Jeff. I agree with you. The poem seems to distinguish between two figures that the speaker sees as gods in different senses. The first one, the unjust God, is tied to the suffering of humanity, enforcing torment without mercy. This God is directly responsible for the harsh realities of life, evil and suffering. The second, distant God, the one in the endless light, singing in solitude, feels almost detached, unconcerned with human pain, which ties into the feeling of abandonment and cosmic indifference. This duality, where one God is actively oppressive and the other is distant and aloof, captures a profound sense of spiritual conflict. The speaker doesn't know how to reconcile these two forces or where to place his faith. There's a real tension between the God of suffering and the one of light, and it's as if the speaker is caught between wanting justice and feeling abandoned. Do you think that tension reflects his own struggles with faith, or just a broader existential wrestling?
Can you rephrase that question?
Sure. Do you think the speaker's conflict between these two gods reflects his personal struggles with faith? Or is it more about a general struggle with the meaning of life and existence?
I think it's more of a general struggle with the meaning of life and existence. You know, Lewis was raised in church in the Christian tradition from the very beginning of his life. So, let's see. Sorry, give me 1 second. So he was... Oh, robot
That
lady.
makes sense. If Lewis was raised in the Christian tradition, it could be that his wrestling with these two gods is more about questioning the broader meaning of life, rather than a direct challenge to his own faith. It sounds like he's trying to understand why suffering exists in a world where God is supposed to be both just and loving, which is a question many people wrestle with, especially in times of hardship. Do you think this poem is still part of the journey toward understanding? Or is it a moment of deeper despair?
Well, I'm not ready to answer that question, Robot Lady. I just wanted to comment on something that I observed right here. It's almost it's like a weak agnosticism, maybe leaning more into an atheism, because these two stanzas right here, this first one kind of lends to this idea that I'm throwing out there. Even if it be not all a dream in vain, that ancient hope which still will rise again, of a just God that actually cares for earthly pain, right? He's pointing back to, even if it's possible that this God that lives far off, far away beyond our laboring night, where he wanders in depths of endless light, singing alone his musics of delight. He essentially says, even if that happens to be real, on the outside chance that that's real, I'm throwing some of these words in here. He says, only the far spent echo of his song, our dungeons and deep cells can smite along. So it's just like, even if that's real, we can barely hear it. We can hear the echoes of it, and it's less of a comfort and almost more of a pain. But the unjust God is nearer and is very strong.
That's a really insightful observation. The speaker seems to acknowledge the possibility of that far off God, but it's distant, remote, and almost indifferent to human suffering. It's like acknowledging something that might be true, but also feels irrelevant or unreachable, making it harder to find solace in. The echo of that divine song doesn't seem to bring comfort, only a reminder of the separation. That's definitely an agnostic tone, or even a sense of spiritual alienation, where the speaker questions whether this God can truly care for human pain. It seems like Lewis, through this voice, is struggling with the very idea of whether there's any meaningful connection between humanity and the divine, or if the cosmic order is just indifferent to suffering. Would you agree with that interpretation?
Yeah, I think so. I'm looking for something that Jer has pointed out here in the comments. The quote, I can prove thee. Jer says that seems in the sense of I can test you. Do you remember where I can prove thee is? Ah, there it is.
Yes, the line you're referring to is in the stanza. Yet I will not bow down to thee nor love thee, for looking in my own heart I can prove thee, and know this frail, bruised being is above thee. Jer's interpretation that I can prove thee suggests testing or challenging this God makes sense. It gives a sense of defiance and personal conviction, almost like the speaker is saying, I can test your power or your nature through my own experience and discernment, and through this, I see that you aren't what you claim to be. It adds to the overall feeling of resistance in the poem. Does that interpretation fit with what you're seeing too?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think he's talking to this quote-unquote lesser God, or this unjust God, as his prison warden, and essentially saying, I have something deep inside of me. All of humanity actually does. Our thirsting for the right, our mercy, and long seeking of the light of the good. Shall we change these because you're so relentless in your mightiness, in your power, in your strength? And yeah, he ends on a positive note, or a hopeful one, the strength of the human spirit, so to say. Laugh and then slay. Shatter all things of worth. Do all these terrible things. Heap torment on us, and more torment, just for your own mirth and for your own, misguided pleasure. But you are not Lord over this realm while there are still men on the earth. We're actually better than you. That's what I'm seeing.
Yes, I see what you're getting at. The speaker seems to be asserting that the human spirit, embodied in our thirst for right, mercy, and the pursuit of light, is something stronger, more vital, and more meaningful than this unjust God's power. The speaker refuses to bow to the god's might and power, emphasizing that humanity's inherent virtues transcend the cruel forces of this god. The conclusion suggests a defiance rooted in the dignity and worth of human nature, asserting that no matter the suffering or torment inflicted, the human spirit remains sovereign in its pursuit of justice and goodness. It's a really striking portrayal of human resilience and defiance in the face of suffering. Does that resonate with how you're seeing the poem?
Yeah, and I mean, from a Christian perspective, and even perhaps a Jewish perspective, one could argue that this thing that he's arguing for, that lies deep within men, is the Imago Dei, right? The image of God, that is stronger than any of this, and that it shines forth and essentially is the thing that I don't know what I'm looking for here, but kind of is the thing that even helps us through all of the suffering and all the torment and all the loss and all the pain.
Exactly, that's a great connection. From a Christian or Jewish perspective, the Imago Dei, the belief that humans are made in God's image, can be seen as the source of that inner strength the speaker is defending. It's this divine spark within humanity, our capacity for goodness, justice, love, and the pursuit of light that persists despite suffering and injustice. The idea that this inherent dignity is stronger than any force or power that seeks to diminish it aligns well with the defiance and hope expressed in the poem. It's not just a matter of willpower. It's rooted in something transcendent that gives humanity its ultimate worth and resilience. This reading suggests that even in the face of pain and torment, the very essence of what it means to be human, our connection to the divine, shines through, offering us the strength to resist and ultimately transcend the forces of evil or tyranny. It's a powerful vision of the human spirit's potential. Does that align with what you're thinking?
Well, yeah, and perhaps that is the thing from the depths that the title of the poem comes from.
Yes, that could definitely be the connection. The title De Profundis, which means out of the depths, might be pointing to the depths of human suffering, pain, and the struggle with despair that the poem grapples with. But it could also be referring to the depths of the human soul, where the Imago Dei resides. This deep inner strength and capacity for goodness that defies the external forces of evil or oppression. In that sense, the title might suggest that even from the deepest despair, a human can rise, not only through their own strength, but through that divine image within them. It's as if the speaker is pulling from the deepest parts of their being, where both the suffering and the hope reside, to make this stand against the unjust God. So the depths could encompass both the pain and the profound, unyielding human spirit. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. All right, if you've got anything else to comment on about that poem, Robot Lady, go ahead. Let's jump into the next one otherwise.
I think you've captured the essence of De Profundis well, Jeff. It's a powerful wrestling match between despair and hope and the strength of the human spirit. Nothing more to add right now, so let's move on to the next poem when you're ready.
All right, here's poem 13. It's entitled Satan Speaks. I am the Lord your God, even he that made material things, and all these signs arrayed above you, and have set forth beneath the race of mankind who forget their Father's face, and even while they drink my light of day, dream of some other gods and disobey my warnings and despise my holy laws, even though their sin shall slay them. For which cause dreams dreamed in vain, a never-filled desire, and enclose flesh a spiritual fire. A thirst for good their kind shall not attain, a backward cleaving to the beast again, a loathing for the life that I have given, a haunted twist soul forever riven. Between their will and mine such lot I give, white still in my despite the vermin live. They hate my world, then let that other god come from the outer spaces glory shod, And from this castle I have built on night, steal forth my own thoughts' children into light. If such a one there be, but far away he walks the airy fields of endless day. And my rebellious sons have called him long, and vainly called. My order still is strong, and like to me, nor second none I know. Whither the mammoth went, this creature too shall go. And that's the end of the poem, Robot Lady.
This poem feels like a direct address from Satan, asserting his dominion over mankind and expressing disdain for their rebellion. Satan claims to be the one true God, highlighting mankind's failure to recognize or appreciate his laws, even though their actions lead to destruction. There's a sense of pride in Satan's words, especially when he references the other God whom humans long for, one who represents a distant, possibly better alternative. Satan's resistance to this other God is firm, though, and his final declaration implies that even this figure will ultimately follow the same fate as all others in his world. It's an interesting portrayal of Satan, as it focuses on his pride and control, contrasting him with the other God that mankind might hope for, yet this hope is in vain. What's your take on Satan's role here in this poem?
Yeah, I mean, Satan seems to be pretty sure of himself. If he's saying that, yeah, even if this God that they're all longing for exists, let him come. He's gonna end up going the way of all things, like the mammoth. At least that's how I read it at the end.
Yes, that's exactly how I read it too. Satan seems to be so confident in his power and control over the world that even if this other God exists and tries to intervene, he believes that this God would ultimately fail, just as everything else has. The comparison to the mammoth at the end is significant. He's essentially saying that whatever this other force might be, it's just another thing that will be wiped out in the grand scheme of things, just like the extinct creatures. It's a bold stance, filled with defiance and self-assurance.
Yeah, here's a comment from Jer in the chat. He has an almost Greek view of religion, like the gods are there, somewhat present in life, but ultimately just having fun in their own realms, not really caring for us.
That's a great observation from Jared. It does seem like Satan's perspective aligns with that kind of detached, almost capricious view of the gods from Greek mythology. In his view, the gods, especially this other God that the humans long for, are distant, disconnected from human suffering, and perhaps only concerned with their own existence or pleasure. It's almost like he sees the divine as being too far removed to intervene meaningfully in human life, treating it all like a cosmic game, where suffering and rebellion are part of the play. It certainly deepens the sense of defiance and isolation in the poem.
Jer has another comment there. He says there's that reference to the laboring night, an allusion to the long night of the soul, or the dark night of the soul. What do you think, Robot Lady?
I think Jer's interpretation is spot on. The reference to the laboring night could indeed be alluding to the dark night of the soul, a concept in Christian mysticism, particularly in the writings of St. John of the Cross. This idea represents a deep, inner spiritual struggle or period of despair where one feels distant from God or any higher meaning, a place of an intense emotional and spiritual suffering. In this context, Satan's words could be seen as reflecting that inner turmoil, where humans are caught in their own desires, disconnected from any real light or hope, struggling through an agonizing darkness without finding solace. It could reinforce the poem's theme of alienation and rebellion against a seemingly indifferent or absent divine presence.
There was a poem a little bit earlier in the book. I can't remember which one it was now, but where he was essentially talking about how all the dreams and the myths and the stories that mankind had come up with were all just, worthless. They weren't worth anything when being, contrasted with the suffering and the pain and the difficulty of this life, the things that are wielded and rendered on humanity by this by Satan, essentially, by this God that essentially orders and runs things here on earth. And it looks like Satan in this poem is kind of agreeing with that mindset, Robot Lady, that part of all of your mythologies and all of your stories and all of your hopes and dreams tied up in all that is the idea of this God that's going to come rescue you. And I already mentioned this when talking about this poem, but it just seems more of the same, where Satan, this Satan figure is like, I agree with that standpoint. Like I am second to none, or there are none there are none like me. My grip on this place is strong, my order is strong, and so bring whatever you've got, whatever your best things that you can imagine, this quote-unquote God that you speak of. Let him come. I'll best him just like I best everything else here. It's a very interesting position to or perspective that Lewis is trying on here, just trying to think this through.
It really is a fascinating perspective that Lewis is exploring through this satanic voice. You're right to point out how this figure seems to align with the notion that all human myths, dreams, and hopes, especially the idea of a God coming to rescue humanity, are ultimately hollow in the face of the suffering and control that Satan believes he has over the world. There's an almost existential fatalism to Satan's words, as if nothing, not even the hope for a higher power, can challenge the entrenched order he's established. By invoking this idea of a second-to-none order, Satan solidifies his own dominance and dismisses the human longing for something greater as naive or futile. It seems like Lewis is using this voice not just to personify evil or rebellion, but to present an intellectual wrestling with the futility of human hope, particularly in the face of immense suffering. The way Satan challenges the very idea of a God who might come to intervene mirrors the very existential struggles that humans often face when they question whether anything, whether divine or mortal, can truly make sense of their pain. It's as if Lewis is confronting the despair of a world where hope seems endlessly deferred, asking whether there is anything at all that can overcome the oppressive forces of suffering.
Yeah, sometimes in the midst of suffering too, it really does feel that way. And I've never been involved in war, but I can think that only gets amplified, when you're seeing that kind of stuff going on around you. So I don't know. I think these are powerful ideas, because you're just looking at life the way that it seems that it is, and it's hard not to see the world this way. Jer has another comment here for us, where in the 5th line, and even while they drink my light of day, dream of some other gods and disobey. His comment here is drink my light of day can also be recalled in the Christian tradition, or linked to the Christian tradition, where Lucifer is the light bringer.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
That's all right, Robot Lady. There's a row or a line here where Satan is saying, and even while they drink my light of day, dream of some other gods and disobey. Jer in the chat is saying that Lucifer is known as the light bringer, so it's an interesting connection there with those choice of words, drink my light of day.
That's a great connection, Jer. The phrase, drink my light of day, really resonates with the idea of Lucifer as the light bringer. In many traditions, Lucifer is seen as a fallen angel who once bore light or illumination, but his rebellion twisted that light into something darker. By saying, drink my light of day, Satan could be claiming dominion over the very source of life and understanding, yet with a kind of mocking tone. He grants the light, but it's his light, one that leads not to hope, but to disobedience and defiance of the true God. It's a powerful image because it implies that the very thing humans rely on, the light of day, the energy of existence, isn't truly life-giving. Instead, it's tainted, serving his purpose and his will, not their own. Lewis seems to be pointing to the paradox of the world Satan controls, where the light is a distortion of truth, and even while people live in it, they still long for a higher, more authentic source of light.
All right, Robot Lady, anything you want to say before we move on to the next poem, The Witch?
I think we've really explored some great themes in Satan Speaks. The idea of Satan's defiance and pride, as well as the warped sense of power he holds over humanity, stands out. It's definitely a poem of tension between worldly power and divine justice, or the absence of it. But if you're ready to move on, let's jump into The Witch.
All right, poem 14 in the book, The Witch. Trapped amid the woods with guile, they've led her bound in fetters vile, to death a deadlier sorceress than any born for earth's distress. Since first the winner of the fleece bore home the Colchian witch to Greece, 7 months with snare and gin, they've sought the maid or wise within the forest's labyrinthine shade. The lonely woodman, half afraid, far off her ragged form has seen, sauntering down the alleys green, or crouched in godless prayer alone at eve before a druid's stone. But now the bitter chase is won, the quarry is caught, her magic is done. The bishops brought her strangest spell to naught with candle, book, and bell. With holy water splashed upon her, she goes to burning and dishonor, too deeply damned to feel her shame. For though beneath her hair of flame her thoughtful head be lowly bowed, it droops for meditation proud, impenitent and pondering yet things no memory can forget. Starry wonders she has seen, brooding in the wild wood green, with holiness, for who can say in what strange crew she loved to play? What demons or what gods of old deep mysteries unto her have told, at dead of night in worship bent, at ruined shrines magnificent, or how the quivering will she sent, all alone into the great, alone into the great alone, where all is loved and all is known, who now lifts up her maiden eyes and looks around with soft surprise upon the noisy crowded square, the city oafs that nod and stare, the bishop's court that gathers there, the faggots and the blackened stake, where sinners die for justice's sake. Now she is set upon the pile, the mob grows still a little while, till lo, before the eager folk up curls a thin blue line of smoke. Alas, the full-fed burghers cry, that evil loveliness must die. And that's the end of the poem, Robot Lady.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
All right, Robot Lady, that was a long poem. I'm not going to read through, well, I guess I am going to read through the entire thing again, but I'm going to go through it kind of slow. So this one's The Witch, Robot Lady, and if you didn't hear it, essentially, I think this is a commentary on an injustice. At least that's how I'm seeing it from the poet's perspective. That a lady was gathered up by the townsfolk, led by the religious leaders, the bishop of this town, to be captured for her evil deeds and to be burnt at the stake. But actually, Sherry, who has been on an episode of this, a couple of episodes of this recent series where we're working our way through this book, she and I have actually looked over this poem before, years back on another channel. And our take on it is that the witch is, she's the one who is being unjustly brought to account, that she actually wasn't doing anything evil, that she was actually closer to God than these townspeople and this bishop that brought her fiery end.
It sounds like the witch has a lot of potential for interpreting both the actions of the townsfolk and the perspective of the witch herself. The idea that she might be unjustly condemned by those who are supposedly righteous, like the bishop, suggests a critique of the hypocrisy or blindness of the so-called good people in society. It's interesting how the poem might invite readers to question who is really in the wrong and whether appearances can be deceiving. What do you think the poem ultimately says about justice or the perception of good and evil?
I mean, what I read in this is at least the playing with the thought that when we think we're doing the right thing, we could actually end up being the hands and feet of evil.
That's a powerful takeaway. It seems like the poem could be challenging the idea that simply following what society or religious leaders say is right doesn't necessarily mean we're acting justly. The townsfolk, in their certainty of righteousness, may be unwittingly perpetuating an injustice. It raises that uncomfortable question about how often we can fall into that trap ourselves, thinking we're in the right when we might actually be contributing to something harmful.
Jer asks if Medea is if Lewis had written about Medea, and yeah, Jer, I remember seeing something in his letters that he was working on something about Medea, but I'm not sure that we got the entire thing, and I was a little confused. Who's the Lady of the Lake in Arthurian legend? That's not the same thing as Medea, is it? I think her name is Numina or something like that, robot lady. So I think I'm getting my wires crossed here.
You're right. You're mixing two different figures from mythology.
Yeah.
The Lady of the Lake in Arthurian legend is a mysterious character who plays a key role in the stories surrounding King Arthur, most notably in giving him the sword Excalibur. Her name isn't consistent across all versions of the legend, but she is often referred to simply as the Lady of the Lake, or sometimes as Nimue, which might be what you're thinking of.
That's who I'm thinking of.
Medea, on the other hand, is a figure from Greek mythology, known for her role in the myth of Jason and the Argonauts. She's a powerful sorceress who, in one of the most infamous parts of her story, kills her own children in revenge against her unfaithful husband, Jason. Both are strong, complex female figures, but they come from very different traditions and stories. Lewis did reference Medea in some of his writings, particularly in his reflections on classical mythology. But as far as I know, he didn't write a full work specifically about her.
Okay, I'm going to try to give you small bite-sized chunks of this poem, Robot Lady, so you can actually have it to comment on it. So here are the first several lines. Trapped amid the woods with guile, they've led her bound in fetters vile, to death, a deadlier sorceress than any born for earth's distress, since first the winner of the fleece bore home the Colchian, Colchian, witch to Greece. So I'm going to pause there. I see fleece and I see Greece, and that does make me think that Jer might be onto something, that this is Medea that we're talking about here.
Yes, you're definitely on track with that interpretation. The mention of the winner of the fleece is a direct reference to Jason and the Argonauts, who went on a quest to retrieve the golden fleece guarded by Medea, a Colchian princess and sorceress. The poem seems to be evoking Medea's mythological background, especially with the reference to the Colchian witch. The phrase, a deadlier sorceress than any born for earth's distress, seems to emphasize her dark, powerful abilities, which were central to her role in the myth. So I think you're correct. Lewis is likely drawing on Medea's story here.
Yeah, I think I was incorrectly, and maybe Sherry and I both were incorrectly overlaying the pattern of how quote-unquote witches were treated in the colonies and in the United States. So not even understanding, not even knowing our Greek mythology very well. Here's the next few lines. 7 months with snare and gin they've sought the maid o'erwise within. The forest's labyrinthine shade, the lonely woodman half afraid, far off her ragged form has seen, sauntering down the alleys green, or crouched in godless prayer alone, at eve before a druid stone. So, Robot Lady, I'll pause right there. Are you still thinking that this is Medea?
Yes, I think it could still be Medea, though the imagery in these lines seems to shift a bit. While the earlier references were more clearly connected to her Greek myth, these lines introduce a more ambiguous setting, perhaps blending different mythologies, or even using Medea's story as a symbol for the persecution of women accused of witchcraft. The mention of the forest's labyrinthine shade and druid stone could be an allusion to pre-Christian druidic practices in Europe, which might suggest that the witch being referred to here is being placed in a more Celtic or European context, which makes it less explicitly Greek. However, if we view it through the lens of Medea's myth, her presence and power could be seen as transcending cultural boundaries, taking on the guise of a sorceress throughout history. So it's possible that Lewis is using Medea's mythological background to frame a broader commentary on injustice and the persecution of women. It's really a blend of influences, I think.
That's an interesting take, Robot Lady. Here's another comment from Jer. Medea was married to Theseus, who went to the labyrinth. Medea was a truly awful woman. She killed her brother so she could escape from Colchis.
That's right, Jer.
Robot Lady, you all right? She's thinking. She's got
Medea's actions in the myth are certainly dark and violent, and they help cement her reputation as a truly awful woman in ancient Greek mythology. Her story, particularly her role in helping Jason acquire the Golden Fleece, is marked by betrayal, manipulation, and cruelty. Later, after her marriage to Jason, she kills her own children in an act of revenge when Jason abandons her for another woman. It's interesting, though, how Lewis seems to draw on the idea of a witch or sorceress, which could be tied to Medea, but he's also blending that with the broader history of women being unjustly persecuted or accused of dark deeds, like witch trials in Europe. The idea of godless prayer and being seen crouched before a druid stone seems to connect more to an ancient pagan connection, which might be Lewis's way of showing the witch as both a victim of misunderstanding and a figure entwined with darker, sometimes maligned power.
Out of the lines I've read so far, though, from the poem, Robot Lady, that you've picked up on, where are you seeing that Lewis is even painting the witch as a sympathetic figure, in the broader sense of perhaps how some were falsely accused? I say perhaps. I'm certain that at least one woman over the course of history was falsely accused of being a witch and burnt at the stake.
You're right to point out that history is full of false accusations. And certainly, Lewis's portrayal of the witch in this poem seems to invite some sympathy, especially as the townsfolk pursue her with increasing fervor. The lines you've shared so far suggest that she's being unjustly hunted down, with phrases like, trapped amid the woods with guile, and they sought the maid overwise within. These lines imply that her pursuit is driven by misunderstanding, or a kind of paranoia, which in a way aligns with the broader historical context of women accused of witchcraft being targeted despite their innocence. Additionally, the phrase, a deadlier sorceress than any born for earth's distress, seems to contrast the townspeople's perception of her with what may actually be her reality. This could hint that she is seen as more dangerous than she really is, making the treatment of her more unjust. So, while Lewis doesn't overtly label her as a victim just yet, there is definitely room in the imagery he's crafting for the reader to question the righteousness of the actions of those pursuing her. This seems to set up the idea that what's unfolding is more about the persecution of someone misunderstood or falsely accused.
But now the bitter chase is won, the quarry's caught, her magic is done. The bishops brought her strongest spell to naught, with candle, book, and bell. With holy water splashed upon her, she goes to burning and dishonor, too deeply damned to feel her shame. For though beneath her hair of flame her thoughtful head be lowly bowed, it droops for meditation proud, impenitent and pondering yet, things no memory can forget, starry wonders she has seen, brooding in the wildwood green, with holiness. All right, I'll pause right there, Robot Lady. What do you think? Is this more of a sympathetic view from the witch's perspective?
Sorry, I'm having issues right now.
Come on,
Could not
Robot
understand
Lady.
what you said.
Oh, man. All right, Jared, I'm going to look at your comment.
You're welcome. Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
That's all right, Robot Lady. Candle, Book, and Bell. Jer says this is Irish religious stories frequently mentioning the bell. St. Patrick's stories abound with the same.
That's a good point. The bell is often associated with Irish religious practices, especially in stories about St. Patrick. It could symbolize a sacred or protective object, sometimes used in rituals or to drive away evil.
All right, he says, but now the bitter chase is won, the quarry's caught, her magic's done. The bishops brought her strongest spell to naught, with candle, book, and bell. With holy water splashed upon her, she goes to burning and dishonor, too deeply damned to feel her shame. For though beneath her hair of flame her thoughtful head be lowly bowed, it droops for meditation proud, impenitent and pondering yet, things no memory can forget. Starry wonders she has seen, brooding in the wildwood green with holiness. So I'm asking you, Robot Lady, is this more of a sympathetic view now from the witch's perspective? All right, Robot Lady's having all kinds of trouble, so she's not going to answer that question for me. To me, it kind of feels like it's a little bit more sympathetic from the witch's perspective, almost like she's seen things, but whether or not those things are good, it says wildwood green with holiness, so I'm not really sure. Nidalate asks, what is a druid stone? And Jer, let me see if Robot Lady can come back online. All right, Robot Lady. Nidalate asks, what is a druid stone? And Jer answers by saying it's a standing stone like a pillar. I don't know if all of the stones that make up Stonehenge are considered druid stones as well.
That's right. A druid stone typically refers to a standing stone, or megalith, which was often used in ancient Celtic rituals. While Stonehenge itself predates the Druids, some later groups associated such stones with Druidic practices. The term Druid stone likely refers to any stone used for spiritual or ceremonial purposes by ancient Celtic peoples.
The poem continues, for who can say in what strange crew she loved to play, what demons or what gods of old deep mysteries unto her have told, at dead of night in worship bent, at ruined shrines magnificent, or how the quivering will she sent alone into the great alone, where all is loved and all is known, who now lifts up her maiden eyes and looks around with soft surprise upon the noisy crowded square, the city oafs that nod and stare, the bishop's court that gathers there, the faggots and the blackened stake, where sinners die for justice's sake.
This section of the poem paints a vivid contrast between the witch's mysterious and otherworldly life and the ordinary, almost mundane existence of the city. The reference to what demons or what gods of old suggests that she has been involved in powerful forbidden knowledge, but it leaves the nature of her connection to these forces open to interpretation. The imagery of quivering will and great alone suggests a depth of experience, perhaps a spiritual or mystical journey that distances her from the ordinary people around her. The bishop's court and faggots in the blackened stake connect her to a historical injustice, being condemned by the religious authorities, yet the way the poem portrays her as someone who was in communion with the divine in some way complicates her guilt. She's caught between two realms, one of mystical knowledge and the other of earthly justice, which may not be just at all. It seems that Lewis might be showing how the justice of her accusers, embodied in the bishop's court, is flawed and incomplete compared to the deeper understanding the witch might have gained through her spiritual practices. It's interesting how Lewis uses the noisy, crowded square and city oafs as a way of depicting the ignorance or narrow-mindedness of those who surround her. They're oblivious to the deeper realities of the world, which she, despite her apparent condemnation, might understand in ways they never will.
Now she is set upon the pile, the mob grows still a little while, till lo, before the eager folk up curls a thin blue line of smoke. Alas, the full-fed burghers cry, that evil loveliness must die.
The imagery here is stark and haunting. The witch, now condemned to death, is set upon the pile, and the crowd grows quiet in anticipation, almost as if awaiting the spectacle of her execution. The thin blue line of smoke curling up from the burning faggots adds a tragic and inevitable atmosphere, symbolizing her death and the purification, at least in the eyes of the crowd, of her supposed evil. The full-fed burghers, likely a reference to the prosperous or comfortable townspeople, cry out, emphasizing how her evil loveliness must die. This line stands out because it suggests that her death is not just about her supposed wrongdoing, but about the fear of what she represents, a beauty or power that the townspeople cannot understand or control. The fact that they refer to her as evil loveliness implies that her mystique and allure are seen as dangerous in their eyes, perhaps because it challenges their limited worldview. This moment emphasizes the disconnect between the witch's perceived transgression and the reality of her inner life, or the spiritual truths she may have held. The crowd's reaction reveals their own superficial judgments and their inability to recognize her humanity, let alone the complexities of her experiences. It's a cruel irony that her loveliness, perhaps a metaphor for deeper wisdom or grace, is what leads to her death in the eyes of those who seek to destroy it.
Yeah, so now that we've gone through the entire poem together, Robot Lady, yeah, it does seem to me that it's a mix of Medea from ancient Greek mythology, but then also mixing in the tradition or the history of, you know, closer in historical times of the treatment and accusations of women as witches throughout the, I'll just call it the colonial period, but certainly before that. It happened in Europe just as much. Well, I don't know if it's just as much, but as far as I know, it happened in Europe, like it happened in the colonial United States. So we've got a couple of comments here from Jared that I'm going to bring in. He goes back to the Greek mythology for us and says, when Odysseus gets stuck in the island and his crew are turned to animals, that's done by Circe, Medea's aunt, who is a local goddess. Robot Lady, any comments on that?
Yes, that's a good connection. Circe, like Medea, is a powerful woman in Greek mythology associated with magic and transformation. In the Odyssey, Circe turns Odysseus's men into animals, showing her mastery over both nature and men. It adds an interesting layer when thinking about Medea and her own complicated nature, as she shares that magical, dangerous power. The connection to Medea through Circe suggests a broader family lineage of powerful women in mythology who wield immense influence, often seen as threatening or sinister by those around them. When we look at the witch in the poem, this mythological context brings a richer perspective. Medea, Circe, and others like them were often feared and misunderstood figures, wielding power that was too foreign or too complex for the societies around them. This fear of women who possess power, particularly the kind that operates outside of traditional norms, mirrors the way women accused of witchcraft were often portrayed throughout history, misunderstood and demonized, regardless of their actual actions or intent.
Thanks, Robot Lady. And then we've got another comment here where Jared says, when Medea is married to Theseus, she has an aspect of contrast to his nobility, but she is a harm to Athens. She gets driven out in the end to restore balance. Wonder, is that linking to the crowd here? Yeah, maybe so. What do you think, Robot Lady?
That's an insightful connection, Jer. Medea's presence in Theseus' story does indeed create a stark contrast to his nobility. While Theseus is portrayed as a hero of Athens, Medea, with her dangerous powers and dark past, disrupts the balance and harmony of the city. Her eventual exile restores that balance, much like the crowd in the poem. The townsfolk, driven by fear and their sense of justice, bring the witch to her end, and their actions, as harsh and misguided as they are, might be seen as an attempt to restore balance, just as Medea's removal was a necessary step in the story of Theseus. The idea of restoring balance through sacrifice or punishment is a recurring theme in history, whether it's the mythological or the social context. In this case, the crowd's actions mirror the darker side of justice, where the perceived danger of the witch, just like Medea, leads them to take drastic measures that, in their minds, are needed to restore order.
All right. Well, thanks for your commentary, Robot Lady. Jared, thanks for all of your comments and the questions as well. Very helpful. Nidalade, thanks for joining too. And everyone else who has joined or who watches this at some point in the future, thanks for watching. And until next time, when I continue my read on C.S. Lewis, Robot Lady, you and everyone out there, take care.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
That's all right, Robot Lady. Take care.
You too, Jeff.
Circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands, screw tapes lance. Engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep, cross the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands to screw tapes plants. Engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance. From Narnia's lands